The story begins with our hero, Aiden, and his family being chased off a cliff. My guy is a bona fide barbarian, and hails from a clan that considers ending life on the battlefield an honor. His father fights hordes of men like himself, as they make their way to our hero and his mother. With a loud voice, the honorable barbarian yells at his spouse to prepare the transportation spell while he buys them time. The woman immediately kickstarts the process as she holds her child at the cliff's edge. Watching closely, the boy sees as his father massacres the men who betrayed him. Despite being an overpowering beast, he is stabbed by multiple spears. His son, who can only shout and worry, is stopped by his mother from committing a reckless act. As she prepares the spell, her husband continues the endless slaughter. Finally, the spell works and she lets go of her son, who is being carried away by a bright light. She tells him that anywhere in the Starlands will be better than where they are. With tears on her face, she begs the child to survive. The boy cries out as he tries to grab his mother, saying he is too scared, but with a roar from his father beckoning him to become strong enough to lose nothing and no one can touch him, edging him to survive. He cries as he accepts his father's last words. He noted that there wasn't a trace of fear from his father's last words, but only pride as a barbarian. Years later, on Earth, some street thugs corner up a rich kid named Jin T just after his college entrance exams with the hope of robbing him. Surprisingly, Four Eyes seems calm and even warns them that something bad might happen if they continue with their act. Cluelessly, they make fun of him, but he then speaks about his friend who will be present. In return, one of the thugs grabs him to hit him, but he is suddenly pummeled to the ground by a force that broke through the nearby wall. Trying to process what happened, one of the bullies looked toward the source of the demolition and spotted a rather huge person who had his fists stretched out. The huge lad, who happens to be Aiden, but goes by the name Kang Chialdu, finds his friend. Noticing the ongoing scenario, Kang grabs one of them and pummels him for trying to harass his friend. Moments later, the friends casually walk away from the scene. Chialdu, who happens to have the build of a pro wrestler, has his humanity questioned by Jin for punching through a concrete wall. The big O flinches as his cover is nearly blown, but he affirms to be human. Despite Jin's piercing gaze, Chialdu manages to change the subject and urge them to go home. In Chialdu's home, during dinner, the high schooler has 3 rice bowls emptied and is on his 4th one. Despite the huge rations being devoured, our protagonist's foster grandfather wonders why the boy isn't eating much like he used to. Even the barbarian questions the old man for not eating plenty, but the man tells him that age has taken a toll on his body, so he gets satisfied watching him eat instead. Chialdu notes the person he is grateful for the most is his grandpa, a man who as a boy liked him with no place to go and raised him without asking for anything in return. Still having their meal, the grandfather informs him that his coach called asking if he's going to be a boxer. To his surprise, the boy rejects the idea of being an athlete and finishes his food. Shocked by the revelation, the old man asks him why. After all, he has won every award for every sport he has tried. He wonders if it isn't a waste. Inwardly, Chialdu notes that humans and barbarians are different species, so participating in sports would be violating the spirit of fair play. He believes that there's only one path for a barbarian, and it's that of a warrior. A bloody battle against worthy opponents. The problem he has is that the earth is too peaceful. Sitting outside, after his meal and pondering on the matter, Chialdu's train of thought is interrupted by his grandfather's reaction to the news. Quickly, he enters the living room and watches the report on the TV, which talks about an unidentified disaster that occurred in Qingju. Wondering what led to it, he asks his grandfather, and the man explains to him that some monsters appeared in that area and the death toll has already passed 120. He worries that it's the end times. As for our protagonist, seeing the additional footage of one of the monsters on TV, he starts shaking. He then informs his grandfather, who beckons on him to sit down, that he'll be going out for a bit. Several minutes later, Chialdu has Jin take him to the venue. The friend tells him that it'll be the last time he'll act as his chauffeur, urging him to get his license. Thanking the Silver Spoon for his help, Chialdu remembers seeing the monster he saw on TV as a child and wonders if it's connected to the world he used to live in. Suddenly screeching to a stop due to the traffic ahead, the party gets down from their vehicle to check what's going on. They spot the military and confirm to be in the disaster area. Some men spot Chialdu thanks to his hefty build, so they come over to him and ask him which group he's with. Not understanding what they meant, the kid looks at them flatly, but one of them stretches out a card after concluding that the boy doesn't belong to any group, asking him to join if interested. The confused teen asks if the group is a sort of guild where warriors gather. He sees the name New Star Development written on the card, and one of the men laughs at the boy's question, thinking he's fooling around. The person explained that since they are developing planets, they are more like workers than warriors. He then urges the boy to join their group. Realizing that they aren't what he wanted them to be, Chialdu tears the paper as he declares that he's a warrior. He says that being a worker would be shameful for a warrior, triggering the man who handed him the invite. The macho dude calls the kid a greenhorn and yells at him for refusing their company's offer. Right back at him, Chialdu gets agitated as he feels that warriors are being insulted. Immediately, a thick dark miasma erupted from the tunnel. Everyone around gets ready for what's to come, but the 2 high schoolers do not know what's going on. The miasma forms a huge black ball that announces to them that the end times trial will commence. It states that the end of the world is approaching rest, but another planet called Nova extends a helping hand to Earth's inhabitants. With a massive beam emanating from the orb, it tells them to escape through the portal to Nova. The high schoolers are in no doubt caught in the beam and are brought to an unknown land. As they check around, realizing they are in the forest, Jin freaks out due to not knowing where he is. He starts blaming his friend and even asks where his car is. Suddenly, a message pops up in front of them informing them of their objective, which is to obtain 1 goblin coin, with their reward being their change of status. The rich kid, who is unable to process what's going on, is then brought back to reality by his friend. The built boy tells him to look around and he spots a group of goblins brimming with bloodlust. Immediately, Jin trembles, wondering how on earth they are supposed to catch these monsters. As he tries to pass his message to Chialdu, he sees that his friend has sprinted towards the green creatures and planted his fist into one of their faces, knocking the unfortunate goblin miles away. Chialdu had waited for a moment where he could confirm his true strength, so seeing an opportunity like this, he grabbed it. The lad swings his fist in whichever way at the monsters, stating that his barbarian instincts are telling him to bring on the end times, noting it to be his chance. Chialdu clobbers through the zombies and it surprises Jin T. The ogre of a man smashed 3 goblins instantly. He then notices the fallen creatures disintegrate like a final game boss. Suddenly, a coin appears and a notification pops up, informing Chialdu that he has gotten the goblin coin. An extra info indicates that the currency is non-transferable. The big Brent stretches forth his hand and as soon as the coin lands on it, it dissolves. A message pops out, indicating that our protagonist has passed the trial and has earned the right to become a citizen of Nova. An instruction appears telling him to cross the portal to enter Nova. The boys read through the message and the confused Jin T is clarified by his barbaric friend as he points to a purple wormhole floating above the trees. Moments later, Jin looks roughed up due to fighting goblins. He curses his friend for hurling him into the midst of goblins without warning. The child yells if he wants him killed and Chialdu is left with no choice but to remind Jin about the non-transferable rule that is being imposed on the coins. Hence Jin has to earn them himself. Still annoyed at the sudden act that happened earlier, Jin continued his protest. As a result, his back is left exposed to a goblin that lunges forward to attack him. Luckily, the barbaric friend is nearby and he swats the creature like a bug. Chialdu then assures his friend that he won't let him die. After all, it's his fault that he is with him in the strange land, so he'll take responsibility and help. Jin thanks Chialdu and watches as the goblins disappear to indicate that he too has passed the quest. In a nearby bush, a soldier uses his binoculars to examine the area. He spots their duffel bag that was stolen by some goblins earlier. After reporting the information to his fellow sergeant, they then decide to kill the goblins. Not far from them, the 2 high schoolers approach the bag and check out the contents. Seeing that it is rations, they speak about eating some of it before proceeding with their quest. Out of nowhere, 2 soldiers jump while pointing their guns at the teens, mistaking them for goblins. Thankfully, they reassess the situation so no shot was fired. Later that evening, the parties sit together and they have a meal. There the soldiers confirm the boys to be without weapons and Jin clarifies that they ended up in that land without knowing what kind of place they are. The nerd then asks if soldiers are also participating. He believes that if that were the case then the status window must be true. One of the men affirms his guess and explains that the government is preparing for the apocalypse. The soldier says that Nova is like the Stone Age and it'll be a place where humans will migrate. For that to happen, they need to work together and build villages. He notes that companies and organizations are also jumping in to prepare for the new era and a competition unknown to the general public has already begun. Chialdu then asks if there are many monsters like the ones he saw earlier. In response, the soldier affirms his guess in a roundabout way. The kind soldiers leave their duffel bags for the boys, assuring them that they have enough supplies. Jin immediately thanks them from the bottom of his heart. As for our protagonist, he smiles as he remembers the soldier's words regarding how challenging Nova will be and concludes to hunt more. Later that night, after parting ways with the soldiers, Chialdu drags Jin along for a hunt. As usual, Jin complains due to the situation not being reasonable, but his barbaric friend says that they can't sit around, especially since they've got information from the soldiers regarding the place. He notes that they need to grow faster. Not far from them, they see a tower made of wood with goblins guarding it. At the top of the tower, there's a shaman goblin who happens to be chanting spells. Jin asks in bewilderment what is going on, but his friend smiles like he has won a lottery. While the nerd assesses the danger, Chialdu leaps toward the base while holding a frying pan as a weapon. With his eyes burning in fury, he one-shots the goblins guarding the tower and then leaps on it to get his prey. Noticing the boy coming his way, the shaman goblin commands lightning from the sky and zaps the barbarian. Jin shouts in concern after witnessing what just happened. The tattooed shaman goblin snickers as he believes he has won, only to be shocked that the boy is still alive. The goblin strikes him again, but the kid doesn't pass out even though he's charred by the attack. Chialdu notes the attack to feel like his spine is tingling. He says he can take the attack because he is not just a barbarian but the son of the greatest shaman. Taking a huge leap, he appears in front of the tattooed goblin and strikes it down with a lightning-coated attack, saying that the pain that doesn't kill him makes him stronger. The result crashes the tower. After the rubble clears, Chialdu is shown lying on his back as he notes what he faced to be dangerous. He also notes that it's thanks to the magic resistance from his mother's bloodline that he was able to endure the attacks. More goblin coins and a golden orb appear. The status window appears and reveals the orb to be a mana orb. It states that it can be activated with 10 goblin coins. The mana orb permanently grants the user a small amount of mana. Lastly, it's non-transferable and exclusive to the Apocalypse trial. The charred boy wonders if he can gain mana like a shaman. Suddenly, the orb enters his chest and he is enveloped in mana, noting that he feels like he has powered up so well that it puts his previous efforts to shame. While wondering if it's the power of the orb, Jin runs to meet his friend and wonders why he is still fine after being struck by lightning. He asks again if Chialdu is human, but the Brent tells him that they need to hunt even more. The fighting maniac urges for more combat against the shamans, but his friend can't relate, so he yells at him to stop. The following day, after waking from a tent, Jin spots Chialdu and realizes that the barbarian hunted goblins without sleeping. Outside the tent, Chial sits on a nearby rock and holds 3 orbs. He brags about his feat to the rich brat, stating that the extra 2 orbs are for strength and perception. Clutching his arm, he says he can't wait to test his power. After all, he has gotten insanely strong in just one day. Jin sighs and calls Chialdu crazy. Suddenly, a new task appears in their status window. The theme is for them to escape. From the message, 12 hours have passed in the Apocalypse trial. Currently, field bosses are appearing about. The status bar clearly warns them to escape since the bosses are too powerful for them. Jin immediately tells his friend to escape with him through the portal. As for Chialdu, he smiles like a pervert upon hearing the information that there are stronger bosses. Out there on the field, some soldiers try to fend off a giant ogre, but their bullets don't work on it. The monster swings his stick at them, and just before the moment of impact, Chialdu appears and breaks the club with a single punch. The surprised soldiers wonder how it's possible, but Chialdu tells them to step aside. He takes a stance as he notes that he needs to fight the monster bigger than him. Chialdu leaps to attack the ogre, and as soon as his fist collides with its skin, he compares the ogre's skin to steel plates. Immediately, the ogre reciprocates the attack and our main character eats dust for a few minutes. Jin, who just arrived at the scene, is shocked that Chialdu got overpowered. The soldiers behind him then explain that it isn't easy to take down field bosses. The requirement needed for such an act is a tank class. The ogre then walks up to the lad and tries striking him on the head. Luckily, Chialdu's instinct kicks in and he manages to avoid the blow. The adamant boy admits that he has to avoid a head-on clash. The ogre then launches its fists at the barbarian, but the boy simply evades them. As he notes that the monster's attacks are easy to read, he decides to use its strength against it by toppling it with its momentum. After smacking the monster on the ground, Chialdu leaps into the air and tells the ogre to grit its teeth. He crashes his fist into the ogre's face, shattering its teeth. The boy doesn't stop there as he continues hurling heavy blows at the monster's face. The shocking sight terrifies the soldiers since it looks like a norm in their world is being violated. Moments later, Chialdu rejoices like an athlete who just surpassed the world record. This is due to winning against something far stronger than him. After the ogre's defeat, it transforms into a black orb. The status window opens up to show Chialdu what the ability is. Seeing it, the lad stares intently. Later, the party gathers at the base of the portal and the soldiers thank Chialdu for saving his life. Before they leave the high schoolers, they advise them that they should buy as many items as possible from the shop before going to Nova. The soldiers point in a direction and the teenagers spot a goblin with blue eyes. The creature spoke fluently and it shocked the humans present. The soldiers then leave the boys to give their report. Immediately, Jin asks his pal what they should get since they have lots of coins. Without wasting time, the party concludes by buying plenty of equipment. They rejoice as they carry their bags of weapons and head to the portal. Standing in front of the purple wormhole, Jin asks Chialdu if he isn't nervous since they are finally going to another planet as usual. The barbarian says he is brimming with excitement. They are finally taken to Nova, and upon arrival, they note the planet to have 2 moons. Nova gives off a vibe similar to Earth, but it's subtly different. Arriving late in the night, the Wanderer's spotlight's not too far from them. Jin notes that there must be people gathered in that area and suggests that they head in that direction. Chialdu suddenly cuts in saying that they've got a problem. He announces that he's starving and Jin immediately freaks out, noting that his pal turns into a beast when he's hungry. He wonders what they should do since it'll take them half a day to get to the village tent. Suddenly, a voice asks them if they just got to Nova and if they need any help. Turning their backs, they spot a blue-haired beauty. Immediately, Jin starts mediating with her, asking if there's anywhere nearby where they can find food, claiming that they arrived there with nothing. The girl disagrees silently with his last point as she looks at the wrapped cloth being carried on a stick. She then beckons on them to follow him, stating that they need to help each other in such apocalyptic times. She says she knows a good place to get ingredients. Boys being boys do not bother doubting her for a second and immediately follow her. They walk inside the forest and arrive at a pond, which the girl claimed to have accidentally discovered. Immediately, Jin brings out the fishing rod among the items they bought from the shop. He cautions Chialdu to wait while he makes the rod. As for the girl, she says she'll bring the bait she left somewhere and head there. Adjusting the rod, Jin says he was worried but he is relieved to meet a kind person. Chialdu, who tried to calm his tummy, struggles to remain sane. Suddenly, Jin's status window appears, telling him that he has awakened the crafting skill. The barbarian, who has reached his limit, jumps into the pond, stating that he'll catch the prey with his bare hands. Jin yells at the hungry oaf but to no avail. Before long, footsteps crept behind him and the owners asked him why he was alone. Jin turned back and spotted the girl from before with scary men by her side. He then asks her if they are her friends but it triggers them to laugh at him. The hoodlums then tell him that on Nova, if he goes around looking so clueless, he'll get robbed by people like them. Within minutes, Jin finally realizes that they've been tricked. Mrs. makes fun of him by saying it's natural for the weak to get eaten. She then demands that he hand over everything he has. Despite being held back, Jin tells them not to mess with him or they'll seriously regret it. A guy amongst them slaps him for trying to act tough. He then asks to confirm Chialdu's location and one of them points at the water mockingly, saying that the runt might be hiding there out of fear. Suddenly, Chialdu comes out of the water with 2 crocodiles biting him. The people around were at a loss for words at the sight. Our protagonist notes the new ability he has to be incredible. Back then when he got the black orb, his status window told him that he could obtain one of the ogre's special abilities. Despite the crocodiles biting him, he does not have a single scratch thanks to the ogre's tough hide ability. Stepping out of the water, he asks the new faces who they are since he didn't plan for them. Immediately, Jin yells for him to save him and they've been fooled. Asking Jin if there's a problem, the rich kid yelled that he got smacked by the troublemakers. The men take their stances against him believing that they'll win against him but one of them gets knocked out instantly. Chialdu then announces that they should prepare themselves because he doesn't solve problems but eliminates them. After whooping their asses, Chialdu burns his meat on a stake. From the thugs, he learns that they are from an organization called Yangju's Gang and are known for extorting newbies. One of the thugs wonders where Chialdu's from since he looks so young. Our protagonist then asks if he's their leader but he shakes his head. Their boss name is Jianyanggu, known as the current strongest in the area. The girl amongst the thugs starts making mouths as she believes their boss will deal with Chialdu and Jin T. She says that their boss is incredibly powerful with the stat stones he extorted. The urge to vomit suddenly sweeps the air as Chialdu casually tears through the crocodile flesh from the scale with his teeth. The buffed high schooler throws his meal to the ground and asks the thugs to lead the way to Yanggu. On getting to the headquarters, Chialdu makes a racket by eliminating the top dogs of the supposed boss. Standing over the pile of knocked out fodders, Chialdu says the alligator meat has started digesting. The crowd starts freaking out due to the monstrosity before them. They start blaming Jongdu, one of the thugs, for bringing trouble to their base. Scarface notes that they'll be in trouble if their boss wins since they are already viewed as traitors. Chialdu yells out the boss's name, demanding that they fight like gentlemen. After causing a racket, Yanggu is forced to come out and meet the source of the noise. As soon as Jin sees him, he trembles due to the gang leader being bigger than his friend. The man asks who dealt with his boys and Chialdu meets with him eye to eye. Seeing that the troublemaker is a young boy, Yanggu insults him but he gets his diss thrown back to him. While Chialdu replies, an uppercut is thrown at him at a very fast pace. Thinking he has stopped the boy's mouth from working, Yanggu then decides to give his speech. To his surprise, Chialdu replies, telling him that the one with the stronger fist is an adult. It turns out that Chialdu caught the boss's blow from the very beginning. Creating distance between them, Yanggu praises the lad for blocking his punch. He then says that if he wins, Chialdu should become his second in command. As for Chialdu, he says he'll be taking the people he whooped earlier with him if he wins. The fight starts with our protagonist throwing a straight punch at the boss's stomach but it doesn't appear to have any effect. Surprised, Jin couldn't believe his eyes. On the sidelines, Jongdu states that his boss has consumed 12 stat stones with more than half of them being strength stat stones. Jongdu compares his boss's skin to that of an ogre. Confirming his underling's statement, Yanggu wonders why Chial's fists are getting through. As the teen continues throwing heavy punches, he praises the boss's skin for being so tough, saying he is quite strong. The old man creates distance between them and then bluffs on the lad's punch being ticklish, knowing fully well that he is being torn down bit by bit. The gang leader then charges and throws a punch at the high schooler and at that moment, their fists clash into each other. The result of the attack tears some nails off the boss's finger. It's caused by the ogre's skin. From that attack, Yanggu realizes that the lad has the ogre's skin as an ability of his. Without wasting time, Chialdu grabs the geezer by the neck and tells him to clench his teeth because his tongue might get cut off. Seeing their boss about to be humiliated, the crew yells that they'll be joining the fight. To their surprise, Jongdu and the other things who got ass whooped steps in to stop fodders. The crew members start yelling at the traitors and they simply say that they are just loyal to the stronger person. Jongdu believes that it's better to fight against the crew since he's going to be treated as a traitor no matter what. To their surprise, their boss is sent flying several meters above them. As soon as he lands, he sees Chialdu following up with another attack and quickly begs him to spare him. Luckily for him, the fist stops over his face. Chialdu gets mad, calling the boss a pathetic person since he begged for his life. He thought he had finally met an interesting person but he was wrong. Moments later, Chialdu's crew raided the goods from Yongu's. As they are about to leave, the geezer asks the Barbarian for the organization he is from since he hasn't seen his face around before. To his surprise, Chialdu tells him that he is simply a high school senior. After the new crew finally set up their tents, Jongdu thanks Chialdu for taking them in. Our protagonist believes that the way of the Barbarian is to grow stronger through battle. He rejoices inwardly at his first subordinates. While clenching his fist, he notes himself to be weak because he hesitated when he could have stricken the final blow. He even says that his father would have been disappointed had he seen that he saw the match. He grits his teeth saying that he should have taken Yongu's head. Chialdu then calls Jin his vice captain, asking if he instructed the newbies well. The boy feels elated for being referred that way and affirms that his instructions have been carried out. The bigger high schooler starts feeling impatient as he says that they have to go, wondering what his friend is saying. Jin asks him where and the Barbarian says that he has decided their next venue. He says that his instincts are telling him that if they go beyond the place he is pointing at, they can become stronger. While smiling like a freak, Chialdu reveals their goal to be the huge pyramid that's miles away. The status window pops out, stating the place ahead to be the pyramid sanctuary. The next morning, Chialdu addressed the newbies, telling them to stay behind and guard the tents while he and the vice captain cross the river. Jongdu praises his new boss inwardly and then asks him when he'll be back. The Barbarian doesn't know and guesses it's when they return to Earth. Jongdu then informs him that the earliest portal will open in 4 days. This is due to a day already passed since the previous one opened. This means that the portal in Nova opens once every 5 days and a day on Earth is 5 days in Nova. Learning that the portal opens on a schedule, Jin feels drained since he doesn't like the barbaric planet. The captain then declares that they'll be back in 3 days. In Hard, Chialdu notes that he'll be bringing his grandpa the next time since he cannot afford to leave him on dying Earth. After getting info from Jongdu, Chialdu requests his name, and after being told that, he names the man number 1. While talking to the newbies, he tells them that he'll call them 5 siblings with their numbers ranging from 1 to 5. The lady amongst them shouts in protest, but Chialdu glares at them, shutting them up. Shortly after, he and the captain leave the land for their quest. While on water, as the party paddles, Jin notes that his crafting experience is slowly increasing. His captain, however, doesn't like the pace at which they are going, so he ties a rope to himself from the raft and dives into the water. Jin feels triggered by his effort being rendered useless beside his friend. Chialdu starts swimming with the rope, pulling the raft with him at a faster rate than when they were paddling. The feat has Jin noting that his captain quickly adapts. He then compares his life to his friend and steals his resolve to achieve things by himself rather than depending on Chialdu too frequently. They arrive at the venue and see how enormous the pyramid is up close. Their status table pops up, instructing them to contribute to sanctuary activation for special benefits. Jin studies the instruction and asks if it's the first time they've come across something effective. Chialdu encourages him and asks that they get some coins. To his surprise, Jin tells Chialdu that they'll get coins separately. He explains further by saying that he feels like he hasn't done anything on his own, so he wants to try it alone without his help. During sunset, Chialdu fights the creatures in the pyramid. He fights off ostrich dinosaurs and pummels them with his bare hands. Spotting another trying to ambush him, he grabs it by the neck and bashes it on the floor while vowing to turn it into chicken. The result later yields multiple coins and orbs. Suddenly, a pink orb catches Chial's attention. The status window opens, revealing the new skill acquired to be called Throw. If Chial infuses whatever he throws with mana, he can throw with greater power and speed. The boy grabs the orb and smiles at the fact that he has become stronger. He then remembers his friend and wonders how he's doing. On the other side of the pyramid, Jin struggles to bait one of the dinosaur ostriches. He uses his wits to lure the animal and knock it out, delivering the finishing blow with a crocodile tooth that he has. After ending the creature, Jin pants heavily and says that fighting an unfamiliar monster is exhausting, which is in contrast to what his friend said. While the kid rejoices in his victory and assures himself that he can hunt, a lumberjack orc shows up behind him to hand him a deadly blow. Luckily, he sees it just in time for him to react and evade the attack. Classifying himself as finished, Jin notes the monster to be bigger than Jin. It charges at him, but a stone flying at great speed smashes into the orc and the thing passes out. Jin wonders what happened and looks in the direction that the stone came from. He spots Chialdu taking a pitcher's pose. Later that night, they sit down around a fire made to roast the dinosaur ostrich for dinner. Chialdu calmly tells his friend that he was worried, so he came to check up on him. As for the sulking rich kid, he says that he could handle the ostrich dinosaur, but the orc was a different matter. The child belittles himself, saying that there's no difference between Earth and Nova. After all, he's still not able to do anything on his own. Chialdu encourages his friend and passes him a huge meat chunk. He tells the boy that there's no shame in currently being weak, but if he doesn't stop training, then he can become a great warrior. Grabbing the meat, Jin wonders if Chialdu is still the same person that he knows, because since he got to Nova, he seems to have matured a lot. Our protagonist casually drops the bomb that he is a barbarian on the boy. He explains that he's different from humans, but Jin couldn't fathom what he's saying. Confused, he asks Chial again, and Chial says he is a barbarian from another planet. Immediately, Jin yells as he wonders if Chialdu is a barbarian like the warrior race from games. He then recalled the unnatural events that happened around his friend. Chial then learns that his best friend never knew of his origin. After mentioning it, he tells Jin not to compare himself with him since they are different after all. The following day, they get to their destination and are rewarded with lots of coins. The status window announces that they'll receive a first activation reward. Immediately, Jin starts grinning, saying that it must be like a subspace. As for Chial, he notes that the activation reward seems to differ based on the number of coins collected. Both of them receive the sanctuary's blessing. Their recovery rate doubled for 24 hours. Jin folds his fists as he begins to feel less tired. While pondering on the matter, he believes that he can become stronger with benefits similar to what he's experiencing. He then vows to stop relying on Chialdu henceforth as it is time for him to get stronger. Not far from where they were, strange loud voices echoed in the air. Turning back, the boys realized that a group of orcs had come for them. Immediately, the shameless Jin leaps at his friend and asks that he save him from their foes. Chial pushes him aside and says that they've both received the benefits of the sanctuary, so they should fight together. As the boy in glasses stammers to get some words out, his friend tells him not to be a coward, since he's got a barbarian by his side. Chialdu tells Kim Jin-T to take on the orc that called the rest while he handles the bigger ones. Without any moment of hesitation, the barbarian leaps towards the pack, surprising the four-eyed teen. Jin-T yells since he thought they'd fight the monsters together. As for Chialdu, he is nearly stabbed by a spear, but he avoids it and grabs it, while saying that it's unmanly to use a weapon against an unarmed opponent. Chialdu lifts the orc using the spear and slams it to the ground. While holding the spear, he steps on the orc and says they should play fair. Suddenly, the snitch of an orc swings his stick at the barbarian whose guard was lowered, but luckily for him, Jin-T slams into the monster while claiming to be its opponent. Surprised, the orc sees the feeble boy staring at him with his fists clenched, saying he should come at him. It doesn't take long for Jin to be clobbered by the stick swinger. After getting smacked in succession, Jin holds his head in pain as he thought he'd die. Thankfully, his recovery buff is still active, so all his injuries dissipated. While feeling all smug, Jin wipes his mouth and prepares to start over. He avoids a strike while noting that he cannot give up because he's scared and he has to be a friend worthy of a barbarian. After the big talk, the stick prints a mark on the rich boy's cheek, sending him crashing to a nearby tree. Jin notes that he relied too much on the blessing. With the kid's glasses away from his face, Jin snorts out blood from his nose. He then says that he's starting to see the orc's attack pattern. Jin gets up and dashes suicidally towards the orc, reading the monster and knowing that it'll start with a downward strike. Jin evades, then enters into the enemy's range. He picks up his crocodile-toothed dagger and leaps from under the orc's arm and stabs its throat like he's performing an uppercut. The monster collapses and the boy rejoices, having taken down an enemy which seemed impossible for him. Chialdu praises him, noting that the boy has grown quite a bit. Jin says that he thinks he's starting to understand fighting a bit better. The boy looks around and sees that Chialdu has finished off the rest. Immediately, he praises him. Chialdu sees the status window pop up and informs him that he has awakened the spear mastery skill. The captain believes that it's because he fought using the enemy's spear that he got the skill. Jin then remembers how it's the same way he got the crafting skill. Noting that weapons let one learn skills, Chialdu's eyes beam with excitement as he asks if Jin-T is fully recovered. His friend could already guess what he meant, and the barbarian points at the orc's footsteps that came from the bush. He believes that if they follow it, they should find their habitat. All this is due to the weapons that he wants to try. At the orc lumberjack village, the two soldiers whom Chialdu saved from the ogre happen to scout the area. They note the fierce-looking village to be why their army hasn't been able to conquer that continent. One of them tells the other that they should get some leave as reward if they report it to be the first to find the enemy's base. Suddenly, a hand grabs them and the soldiers freak out, cautioning them not to raise their voices. Chialdu. The parties then catch up on things. One of the men talks about the ferociousness of the village. The army man says it's better they head back quickly, noting the orc leader to be the most dangerous among their foes. The leader of the orcs is clad with armor and wields a huge axe. The soldiers say that they'll need a company-sized force to face the orc chief. Hearing the threat level of the monster, the barbarian, who happens to glance at the chief's weapon, steps out of the bush with the intent to have it for himself. He and Jin run towards the village, not yielding to the voice of the soldiers beckoning them to wait. After some minutes, the village is bloodied with coins and corpses caused by the duo. Standing in front of the village chief, Chialdu smiles excitedly. He then tells Jin-T not to interfere. As he cracks his knuckles, he says a phrase which the orcs mutter when fighting him at the chief. Unknown to him that he has pissed the chief, the armored orc gets up and takes a full swing at the barbarian. Chialdu instinctively evades the attack and kicks the orc's armor. Chialdu confesses that it'll be tough taking on the creature barehanded. The axe charges at him at blinding speed, but he manages to parry it. As a result, his arm stings and he notes that the ogre's skin won't be enough to hold up if the weapon strikes him directly. Changing tactics, the barbarian grabs the orc by the already swung hand and yanks it off the axe. As soon as the monster crashes to the ground, he picks up the battle axe and smashes it on the creature's face, splattering blue blood everywhere. The pop-up screen informs him that he has awakened the axe mastery skill. The soldiers who had been watching the whole fight called Chialdu insane for taking on the orc chief. Jin praises him for the feat, but the soldier, who deems the boy as an amazing person, says he's closer to a monster. Chialdu stands over the orc, stained with its blood and wielding its axe. He then asks the dead creature who the monster is. As for the soldier, he notes that Chialdu shouldn't be left free. At the army headquarters, Colonel Jiang Mairan goes through Chialdu's investigation report. She reads his accomplishments, and the soldier standing ahead of her confirms them to be true. She then asks him why they haven't identified someone like Chial, and the soldier tells her it's because his age is not eligible for enlistment. Upon hearing that, the colonel quickly goes through his files and learns that Chialdu is a high school senior. She closes the file and tells the officer to send Chialdu an enlistment notice and have him join the army early. The officer then explains the situation of the boy to be someone who isn't the type to work under people. As the colonel ponders on how to keep Chialdu in the military, Warrant Officer O announces his presence. Upon hearing his name, she welcomes him in believing that she has got the perfect person to take on the job. The officer who is with her worries that she'll be sending the DP. The woman confirms it and says that they'll have to bring Chialdu by force if he refuses. Officer O shows up and asks if something interesting has come up. He happens to be a ranker. The portal in Qingju disaster area brings the people back from Nova. Among them is Yonggu, who happens to be bandaged. The people in the vicinity start speaking ill of the gangsters, recollecting the things that had been stolen from them. As for Chialdu's party, they see that our protagonist's work already precedes him. Immediately, Jongdu starts sucking up to the macho teen. Chialdu appreciates the earth since it's been days since he left it. He then states that he'll be going to his grandpa's. Suddenly interrupting them is a female army officer who happens to be the second lieutenant named Choi Seung-ah. She announces that she has come with a proposal from her army. As Chial wonders what she wants, Jin stares at her intently, noting that she's pretty. Choi Seung-ah starts by commending the teen's achievements, but before she can complete her sentence, Chialdu cuts her off, beckoning Jin T to leave with him. Surprised, the lieutenant, who hasn't been ignored before, announces that she's there to offer him a commission as an army officer. Jin is surprised that the military will skip steps just for his friend, but what surprises him more is that Chialdu refuses the offer. As the beauty queen clenches her fist in frustration, Warrant Officer O says that he told her a guy like Chialdu wouldn't join them easily. He then calls Chial an ill-mannered high school brat. As the macho teen turns around to see who called him, he receives a kick which he instinctively blocks. Officer O then asks him if he's ready to talk. Being thrown backwards by the kick, Chial receives more of it without being able to react. He notes the officer to be strong and fast. Officer O then says that no matter his struggle there, he is still a small fry in new soul. Touching his chest, Chialdu wonders what the soldier meant. Officer O tells the barbarian to accept his sacred duty of military service and he'll help him grow. Chialdu concluded that all the strong people were in Nova, and without that place, he wouldn't have grown stronger. O asks the high schooler if he feels like enlisting, but the boy says that he'll give it his all too. Chialdu says that if he wins, then he won't be joining the army. Like a mad bull, he dashes towards the soldier with an arm stretched and a fist prepared to strike him. O takes a stance as he prepares to intercept the teen. The barbarian then hurls heavy punches at the soldier and the man is only left to block them. Upon collision, the soldier wonders where Chial suddenly got his strength from. The high schooler continues the onslaught of attacks on the officer that hurts the military man's arm. O clenches his arm while wondering how someone can go to Nova only once and come back so strong. He looks at the house fighting style and sees that there's no chance to counterattack. He then decides to bank his pride on the line as a ranker, dashing to trade blows with the Iron Fist. He evades Chialdu's fist after getting in range, but he couldn't do anything about the follow-up. A knee collides with the officer's face and he is sent flying backwards. His momentum is stopped by a car, but the effect shatters the windows. With the battle ending in Chialdu's victory, the kid turns around as he tells the officer to meet with him in Nova later. Choi Seung-ah spots the warrant officer crying and is surprised, unknown to her that it's all an act. As Chialdu leaves the place, Officer O vows to remember his name. At Grandpa's apartment, Chialdu informs the old man that the earth is ending. He reassures his old man not to worry since he's around. As for the Saju drinking man, he stares at Chialdu's battle axe and says it's hard not to believe. As they continue to dine, Chialdu tries to convince the geezer to go with him to Nova, but the man refuses. Although he is happy that his grandchild has found his path, as for him he believes he'll farm till he croaks. Like a child, Chialdu persists, saying that the grandpa can farm in Nova. While gulping a shot of Saju, the old man says that adapting to a new place is work. After all, he doesn't have many days left to live. Hearing the old man's point of view, Chialdu agrees that the planet's trial would be too much for him, not to talk of the savage condition of the planet. Having a new zeal, Chial plans to bring his grandfather later after he has gotten stronger. A knock from the door is heard and the grandpa wonders who it is. Minutes later, Chialdu and Jin are in his room. Jin searches the web and informs him that all the Nova incidents have been disguised as disaster national news. Chial asks if the government is trying to control the media. He believes that people who know the truth will take advantage of it. Jin notes that his barbaric friend is smart at times. Jin reminds him of the soldier he fought and mentions New Soul. The nerd tells his friend that Qingju wasn't the only place where Nova portals were opening. He states that portals to different locations in Nova open in different regions. Governments and corporations who first learned about the portal were already developing Nova. Among the portals is the most prominent one called New Sol, which can be accessible through the Paju portal. Paju is an area developed under government leadership. The portal in that region first opened 2 years ago, which is approximately 10 years in Nova's time. Chialdu thinks about it and concludes that there must be many stronger people there. Jin tells him that there's news about New Sol being better for growth. The downside of the place is that they won't get activation rewards like the type in Chingju Nova. Jin asks the macho teen what he thinks about it, and the dude says that staying in a new continent would only make him fall behind, but if it is a more developed place, he could probably get better equipment too. The captain concludes that they head out, but Jin says they do not have a vehicle. After all, his own got confiscated. Chialdu smiles at him reassuringly and says there's always a way. Later that day, a black car drives the high schoolers to Paju. The vehicle owners happen to be Chial's new crewmates. Jiangdu informs them that they won't be following them since they have some things to wrap up regarding Yanggu's gang. The female member of the crew then asks if it's okay to go to New Sol. She informs him that the place is managed by soldiers, reminding him that the soldier he beat up the last time looked like a high-ranked one. In return, Chialdu says that he'll eliminate those who threaten him. They finally arrive at Paju in the night, spotting the portal overhead. The two high schoolers leave the vehicle and stand below the portal. Jin then asks Chialdu what kind of place New Sol will be, but the macho teen says it doesn't matter as long as he can get stronger. Upon arriving at New Sol, Jin is impressed at the growth they managed to achieve in just 10 years. The civilization has reached the level of the Joseon dynasty. As they absorb the scenery, a woman yells for help because a thief had robbed her. The thief, who seems to be heading in Chialdu's way, raised his weapon at him, telling him to get lost if he doesn't want to die. Without knowing what happened next, he is grabbed by the face and pummeled to the ground. Chialdu then yells that soon enough, he'll take over New Sol. The boys are rewarded food by the lady they helped. Jin sees that it's real soup and rice. The woman in return says she would have lost a month's worth of earnings. Jin appreciates civilization and remembers how he ended up puking due to eating undercooked alligator. Within a blink of an eye, Chialdu has emptied multiple bowls. Four Eyes freaked out since he just downed his first. Still happy, the woman shows up with more rations, telling her to eat as much as she wants, claiming it's free. In return, Chial tells her to inform them if anyone bothers her anytime. He then digs into her food the moment he grabs the bowl. The old woman appreciates his help and informs them that the village is brimming with trouble despite being under the soldiers' protection. Jin asks if it's frequent that she encounters such a problem, and she affirms. The old lady explains that due to New Sol's population explosion, game has become scarce and the place has become a world where the strong prey on the weak. Chialdu smiles at the outcome of things, stating that the bad guys will become his prey. The woman then explains that things don't work that way. She advises the big oaf to be careful and to always fight while using his search skill. The clueless high schooler asks what she means. The woman gets serious as she explains the search skill to be essential. It is a skill that is obtained from hunting horned owls in the hunting grounds. The skill lets them check other people's abilities. Jin reacts happily as he realizes that they can use the skill to see how much they've grown. Immediately, Chialdu and Jin get ready to go to the hunting grounds. Seeing that the boys are about to head out, the shopkeeper decides to get them equipped. Moments later, the boys put on their respective armors as they walk toward the hunting ground. Chialdu praises the durability of the armor and Jin speaks about them needing weapons. They head to a blacksmith recommended by the lady, but on getting there, the place is empty. A drunk man holding liquor and a hammer goes to the shop and the boys tell him that they came for weapons. The drunk blacksmith flatly tells them to leave since he doesn't have any weapon. Jin then asks if he can make them since he heard that the man can make any kind of weapon. As if scoffing at them, the drunk blacksmith informs them that the blacksmiths in Seoul have gone out of business. Chialdu asks why and the man says it's because finding iron is harder than gold. He continues with his prattle, letting them know that the Obongsan iron mine has been taken over by bandits. The man answers Chialdu that the bandits are looters, but they operate on a different scale from common thugs. In New Seoul there exist three powerful figures known as the Three Grandsons. One of them happens to be Jang Ho Chial, the bandit of Mount Obong. The men are terrifying individuals who not only loot but commit murder. The grandsons have taken many subordinates, causing problems for even the military. The drunk man notes that if a war were to break out, it would be a severe blow to New Seoul. Getting excited by the sound of powerful foes, Chialdu brings out his battle axe. He then asks the blacksmith if he will make him a weapon if he takes care of Jang Ho Chial. Immediately the blacksmith sees Chialdu's weapon. He starts to question him where he got it from, but our protagonist makes him promise to keep his word. Chial then tells the man to sober up so that after he's done defeating the bandits, he'll come back to commission the best weapon. The party leaves the blacksmith and heads to the hunting grounds. On the way, Jin asks his friend why he needs more weapons since he already has the orc's axe. The warrior then explains to him that the more diverse the weapons, the better. After all, combat styles change depending on the prey, so it's best to be prepared. Getting to the hunting grounds, they see that it's full with a lot of people. Jin starts lamenting that they won't have any prey left. He believes the Chingju portal to be better than Paju's. The huge teen suddenly has an idea. He picks a rock and uses his skill throw to aim it into the forest. The rock collides with an owl, instantly killing it. They walk over to the dead bird and Jin, who is surprised, asks how Chialdu knows about the bird's location. The big oaf then says that what he sensed wasn't from an animal. The bird fades away and Jin urges his friend to learn the skill stone. When he grabs the orb, the status window pops up, showing him that he hasn't gotten a new skill called Search. The function is to help him observe and analyze the target to produce results. Chialdu uses the skill to check for his information and his curious friend asks him for what it reads. Going through the details, the barbarian sees Fairy's blessing as one of the traits and finds it odd since fairies are hostile to them. Jin suddenly cuts him from his train of thoughts, asking to know his traits, but the barbarian doesn't see anything. As they make fun of each other, two military spies hiding in the woods watch them intently. One of them has a cut on his cheek and it was from the stone Chialdu sent their way. He was fortunate enough for an owl to have intercepted the attack, if not it would have been fatal. The spies consider the situation not to be ordinary and aim to recruit Chial no matter what. Judging by the direction the party is headed, the men conclude that they are going to Mount Abong. They feel that something bad will happen if the boys go there. Upon getting to the bandits' territory, Jin asks to confirm if they are truly there. Suddenly, some men speak up, praising the boys for having the guts to invade their territory. The looters analyze Chialdu and aim to get his axe. As for Jang Ho Chial, he smiles at his new prey and declares the start of the hunt. The sun starts to set as the teenagers walk through the mountains. Chialdu wonders why they haven't seen any bandits even though they've walked pretty deep. Jin T starts worrying as he asks his partner if he's sure about what he's doing. From what he heard, the bandits happen to be very strong. The big oaf reassures his friend that he won't lose to any of them. After all, he has his axe. He suddenly senses an arrow flying his way and with a swipe from his enormous axe, he intercepts the attack. Immediately realizing they are under attack, Chialdu yells that the bandits are attacking. He says they are making quite a racket with their welcome. After analyzing the situation, noting the fog to be thick and the mountain terrain to be a rugged valley, it finally dawns on him that it is a trap. Suddenly, multiple arrows fly simultaneously toward the boys. Immediately, Chialdu commands his vice captain to get behind him. He uses his body as a meat shield, activating his ogre skin. Worried, Jin T asks if Chialdu is okay. In response, the big guy tells Jin to hurry up and run away. He explains that it is impossible to escape from them in that forest. He says that the more they show their backs, the more danger they will face. Jin T notices his friend's face tinged, so he asks him what's wrong with it, wondering if he's been poisoned. The giant teenager then laughs as he says that he was caught off guard. He concludes that the ogre skin cannot protect him against the poisoned arrows. Annoyed, Jin yells at the madman for taking the matter with levity. Chialdu then pushes him aside, saying that it is not a battle he can handle. Once again, Jin asks him if he's sure that he's okay and the response he gets from his friend is that he shouldn't be underestimated. After all, he is a barbarian. Gripping his axe tightly, Chialdu smiles like a psycho. As for Jin, he rushes to get help. Some men jump out of the forest to fight Chialdu, but the dude doesn't slow down while he charges at them. He yells while swinging the axe at his foes that he'll enjoy the battle a bit more. The oaf fights till the moon comes out, eliminating his foes. As he continues, the poison spreads from his cheek towards his arm. Chial notes the poison to be more powerful than he thought. He struggles as he notes that he feels like he can't control his body anymore. From behind, a foe leaps at him while screaming that he has got him. Unfortunately for him, an axe flies straight at his jaw, knocking him out instantly. As more foes appear, they call him a persistent bastard for being able to move despite being poisoned. With the poison rapidly spreading across his body, Chialdu notes that the fight mustn't be prolonged, so he charges straight at the enemies, clearing a path for himself. He reaches a clearing and sees a gaping hole right in front of him. Chial wonders what the pit is. Immediately, he hears a villainous laugh from behind. He then turns around and sees it to be the leader of the bandits. The man commends him for holding up very well. He says he is surprised that Chial made it that far. The man known as Jang Hochul stares down at the barbarian. Chialdu confirms the person before him to be the ringleader. The tall figure, who wears wolf skin, says Chial is the kind of person that makes hunting enjoyable. In response, Chial says he is disappointed since the man before him isn't taking the path of a full warrior. Hochul says the brat is good at running his mouth. He notes that with the paralyzing body in his system, his body won't listen to him. He stares at the sweating child as he notes that he will soon become a dead man walking who will fall into the endless pit behind him. He then gives him a choice: if he surrenders everything and comes under him, then he might spare him. Chialdu, who starts losing his vision, grins like a berserker as he notes that if it were a fight between warriors, then he would have to put his life on the line. He notes he is a barbarian. To everyone's surprise, Chialdu jumps into the pit, saying he cannot leave his end in the hands of dishonorable men. Jang Hochul calls the child crazy. As Chialdu descends, he insults the ringleader and says he won't die by his hands. He splashes into the water and sinks. As his descent continues, he recalls the place to be the mountain that the blacksmith mentioned. The next thing is that he sees himself and his small self atop the cliff where he left his parents. He recalls Jin T asking him if it'll be okay. He also recalls his answer to the question. He then wonders why his inner self is in the form of a child. He concludes that he is probably stuck in the time he lost his parents. Suddenly, he sees spirits in the form of 4 colorful baby dragons flying around him. They were known by the elf race to be spirits. He recalls them to be written as a blessing in his status window, but their existence is both a curse and a divine punishment to barbarians. Right from when he was born, spirits circled him. In his childish mind, he told his friends, and it didn't take long before all the barbarians knew. Without wasting time, the barbarians came after his family. They were hunted and became the enemies of the entire tribe. The boy recalls apologizing to his mother, but she tells him not to since the spirits are a part of him, so he shouldn't deny himself. Her last words were for him to survive. Ever since, he notes that he always turned away from the eerie creatures and himself. Chialdu sheds a tear as he asks rhetorically if because of his past being entangled with the fairies is why his inner self is still frozen as a kid. He cleans his tears as he notes that he has to survive. He can't die after all his family's sacrifice. The boy then sits, believing that it might be possible for his current inner wounds to heal so far as it's where he's at. He tries to control the blood circulation from head to toe. He even pushes himself further by choosing to control the mind, while simultaneously accepting the pain. He struggles to spit out the poisons that have invaded his body. In the process, he sees that his body is responding. It has become lighter as if liberated from shackles. The blue system window keeps popping up, writing that Chialdu is resisting the poison. Over time, after multiple spams of the message, as Chialdu bursts out of the water, he gains a new status which is called poison resistance. The boy climbs onto the land under the pit, asking if it is the power of visualization that he just used, and stares at his left hand while grinning. He suspects that he has become closer to being a barbarian warrior. Chialdu grins like a devil under the moonlit area in the cave. He says that he feels like he has become closer to a barbarian warrior. He looks at his left hand and says the feeling is great. He then snaps back to reality and looks at his surroundings, wondering how he'll get out of there. He suddenly feels a chill breeze from behind, so he turns around and spots a rock with a crack in it. Noting the breeze to come from there, the wannabe barbarian goes there and shifts it aside. On the other side, Chialdu sees a dungeon and yells bingo. Right in front of him are packs of walking mutts with weapons. Immediately, a blue window pops up, informing him that he is in an abandoned dragon's nest. His new goal is to eliminate the Null tribe that has settled in the lair abandoned by the dragon. The clear condition is to defeat the Null chieftain. The reward for defeating the chieftain is its emblem. As for the first clear reward, it is uncertain. After going through the floating blue screen, Chialdu smirks as he says the rewards look good. He positions his axe and repeats an old saying which states that opportunity comes after a crisis. Meanwhile, Jinti makes a face that one won't deem photogenic as he runs for his life. He is being chased by multiple bandits and he yells as if doing so will give him a boost. One of the men shouts at him to stop, saying there's no escape and he is in their grasp. The boy looks back and asks the man if he were in his shoes, would he stop, but before he can finish his sentence, the man leaps at him with a sword, like a prey, saying he's got him. He crashes into the high school teen and pins him to the floor. With one hand holding Jinti's neck, the bandit raises his sword, saying that they'll make use of everything the boy has. Four Eyes, being restricted, yells through the grip and watches as his nemesis brings down the sword on him. Suddenly, an arrow strikes the man down, knocking him away from the boy. With Jinti still holding his neck to confirm what just happened, he sees two men step out of the dark, asking him if he is alright. The one who shot the arrow is Sergeant Kai Yong-su, while the man behind him is Captain Choi Jun-seop. He was the one who got grazed by the stone Chialdu used to kill the owl earlier. Jinti asks nervously who the two unfamiliar faces are, but before the sergeant can respond, the captain halts him and tells them to deal with the bandits first. Surrounded, the sergeant draws another weapon and keeps his arrow behind since they are going to engage in close-range combat. With their backs facing each other, the trio are surrounded by the bandits. The scrawny-looking and unkempt men charge at them, and the captain, who has his sword drawn, tells his party to engage in combat. His trade is that of a ranker. Back at the dungeon, our protag has the walls splattered with Null's blood. His face and chest are covered with vampire juice, so he wipes his cheek while cursing the creatures ahead of him. Despite the huge number of foes he has slain, he notes them to keep coming no matter how many times he takes them down, and even wonders if it works in the same mechanics as in a game. With a stern look, the big oaf notes that despite the dozens he has ended, their momentum isn't breaking, so he wonders if there's something more going on. Looking further than the packs in front of him, Chialdu spots a huge shadow-raising staff and chanting some voodoo spell. Upon spotting the creature, he confirmed they had something up their sleeve. With a huge leap, the barbarian gets over some of the mutts and swings his axe, separating several bodies from their hips. He yells at them to get lost, referring to them as small fries, and uses them as stepping stones. The teenager leaps several meters towards his target, noting that from the very beginning, the dungeon's clear condition was to defeat the Null chieftain. The creepy shaman-looking creature, who looks like Anubis but with multiple mini eyes, holds its staff while baring its fangs at the boy heading towards him. Chialdu asks the odd-looking creature if it's the chieftain, and the monster replies with some caveman dialect. It raises its hands, chants a spell that creates 3 fireballs, and hurls them at the intruder. Just before the attacks hit, the barbarian activates Ogre's skin, preventing the attack from dealing any damage to him. The huge dude, who is still in the air, grins like a scary clown and asks the main knoll if playing with fire is a bit much for a first greeting. Still in the air, the barbarian says it's his turn as he raises his axe and activates his throw skill. With a war cry, he hurls it at his foe. The axe moves at blinding speed to strike the knoll. Surprisingly, the fight doesn't end one-sidedly as usual like with other opponents. This is due to the chieftain's quick thinking. It drags the fight by instinctively using its staff to perfect parry the giant axe that was aimed at his head. The creature then laughs at the boy for thinking he has won since he just foiled his attempt. As it looks up, the mud sees the shirtless warrior falling with his hands held above his head as if he's about to perform a pro wrestling move. With Chialdu grinning like a sinister, he tells the knoll that it isn't done yet. Obeying Newton's law of motion, the bulky dude crashes his fists into the creature, shattering the ground in the process. He catches the staff which was tossed off due to the impact. Attached to the weapon is his axe which was intercepted earlier. The boy then separates the weapons and then steps on the chieftain's body. He says that in barbarian tradition when one wins against a chieftain, they take their head. With that being said, he swings his axe, sending the monster's head flying like a golf ball, yelling dungeon cleared. Immediately, more floating windows pop up, showing multiple rewards. From what our protac can read, he sees that he has been awarded the chieftain's emblem. Through its usage, group creation is possible and the created group can declare territory at major strongholds. To dumb it down, it means that the ability grants him the power to create a tribe. The boy grins as he holds up the staff he just got. The weapon holds the power of a guardian and just like that, it is added to the boy's list of items. The next floating tablet screen informs him that he has been rewarded with world map activation. Wondering what the thing means, Chialdu touches the screen and immediately a green insignia leaves the blue floating screen and is imprinted on his left arm. The power which emanated from the screen now belonged to the boy and it immediately displayed a lot of places. Like a projector, the image comes out from his palm and the boy sees that only New Seoul and Abongsan are lit up. As for the rest, they are dimly marked. He concludes that only the places he has been to are the ones glowing brightly. As he goes through the map, Chialdu breathes excitedly after realizing that he can explore all the vast areas he's seeing. As he speaks of wanting to go everywhere quickly, a red floating screen pops up, alerting him. On it, a warning message is displayed, informing the teenager that the dungeon will soon be closed so he should escape before the cave is filled with water. With no room to debate where to go, the walls start closing in and water pours in from different directions. Realizing that the system is closing the dungeon so suddenly, Chialdu looks at the coins and stat stones on the floor and quickly rushes to grab them before escaping. Shortly, the lad bursts out of the water and notes that he has gotten out of the dungeon. As he looks up, he sees that he is still in the pit, so he wonders how he'll climb out from there since the walls are so smooth and there aren't any rocks. As he examines the walls while looking for a foothold, he hears some voices far above. Among them, he hears Jin-T calling out his name, so he yells back, giving Glasses less stress in finding him. The boy finally finds him in the pit and starts bawling his eyes out, while appreciating the fact that his big friend is alive. He yells at Chialdu to wait while he lowers a rope. The big oaf looks sternly at his friend, noting that he kept his promise. Moments later, the barbarian is out of the pit. How he got pulled out wasn't stated. Jin-T probably tied the rope to a huge tree because there was no way the three of them could pull him out without being dragged into the hole. Outside the pit, Jin-T worriedly checks his friend to see if he's okay. The huge dude grins, reassuring him that nothing's wrong. He then shows the rich kid the insignia on his left wrist. The teenager in turn thinks of it as a radish tattoo since he doesn't know what it is. As for the two soldiers who helped out, they wonder the next step to take since they've revealed themselves. The captain then tells his sergeant that they follow the high schoolers since the orders they were given from above are to observe and protect Chialdu. As they continue conversing, noting that the big guy doesn't have a good relationship with soldiers, the men plan to hide their identity well. The barbarian who asked his friend how he managed to escape earlier is shown the spies by Jin-T. The boy points to them, saying they were the ones who saved him earlier from the bandits. That alone already raised the men's standard before the barbarian. Quickly, they introduce themselves to him, calling themselves friends who met as university seniors and juniors. The huge teenager then uses his owl search skill, which allows him to gauge people's strength on the men and notices that they are strong. As he tries to conclude what they are, the men silently pray that he hasn't discovered that they are soldiers. The big brute then shocks them by asking if they are like him who came to take down the bandits. Without wasting time, the men jump on the wagon and affirm to be what he said. The sergeant then says they have a grudge against the men. Upon hearing the grudge, it piques the barbarian's interest, so he asks them what they meant by that. Noticing their blunder, the sergeant quickly lies through his teeth since they haven't come up with a scenario. He says that his mother lost her life to the bandits. Immediately, Chialdu recruits him into his team, calling them brothers like he's older than them. He then vows to help with their vengeance. After all, they saved his buddy, Jin-T. Confused, the men wonder why they were referred to as the younger siblings since they are way older than him. The captain even points out that they are 31-year-olds, but Chialdu lies with a straight face that he is 32. In the captain's inner dialogue, he curses the barbarian for lying so shamelessly since they know that he is a high school senior. Grinning like a proud father, Chialdu assures the sergeant to worry not, vowing to put Jang Ho-chial's head on his mother's memorial table. The sergeant can only freeze like a stone as he realizes how far his lie has been bought. He thanks the big dude with a shaky voice but apologizes to his mom and his thoughts for using her. The big oaf laughs hysterically as he pats the sergeant's shoulder and walks along with him. The captain recalls the rumors of the barbarian being very ambitious, but for him to return so soon with the goal of defeating Jang Ho-chial, it makes the soldier give his hat off to him. The man, who looks at the men as they walk ahead, calls out to Chialdu, asking him of his next step and if he has a strategy. In response, the boy grins wickedly due to being called in a formal way, forcing the captain to correct himself and call him brother. Fixing his error, the soldier asks the barbarian for his next plan. The shirtless warrior grins happily due to the new bond he just got. He then tells them that they'll search the whole area thoroughly for their enemy's hideout, then they'll storm right in and take down the commander. A simple plan for a brawny person like him. The higher-ranked soldier politely interrupts, asking if he can speak. After being permitted and called a younger sibling by the boss, the captain observes that Chialdu has been scratching himself since he came out of the pit. He starts by telling the teenager that there's no need to go around searching since their enemy's main base is at the summit of the fourth peak to the east, while pointing his finger to the mountainside. Surprised, the warrior asks him how he knows such info. Quickly, the man replies, thanks to the point brought up earlier by his sergeant. He says that he did a lot of research for the purpose of revenge. The big guy doesn't push further, and while looking back, he tells the team that they'll head straight for the summit. Grinning like he just won a lottery, the big brute points at their next goal and says that men should be direct. Later, after getting close to the goal, they encounter some bandits on the road and engage them in combat. The shirtless warrior doesn't waste any moment as he cuts his opponents into halves with his gigantic spear. The two soldiers also engage their foes with their swords, sending the men flying in different directions. One of the bandits fires multiple poisoned arrows at the powerhouse, but the weapons are broken into bits like twigs. On the surface level, it looks like the warrior simply uses his bare hands to shatter the arrows, but in reality, he activates poison resistance along with his ogre skin. Citing the archer, the brute yells at him as he separates the foe's head, saying that such petty tricks won't stop him. Within a few minutes, the party clears all their foes and Four Eyes praises his friend's poison resistance skill. The soldiers, who are a couple of meters behind the school kids, speak to each other. The sergeant calls our protag an idiot but praises his skill. He is surprised that the boy managed to pull through barehanded. The captain agrees with him and says that going by their rate, the barbarian might actually take down Jang Ho-chial. He thinks about the possibility and considers the option not to be a bad one. In that area, there are 3 forces stationed there, with the trio dividing the territory like a huge pizza. The southwest is known as New Seoul and it is guarded by the military. To the northeast are the bandits of Obongsan and the mounted bandits of the northern wilderness. The captain notes the reason why the military couldn't subdue the bandits was not just due to the agile combat skills of Jang Ho-chial's men. Should the military lose in a war, New Seoul wouldn't be free from the mountain bandits' threats. Looking agitated, the captain notes that if their major, Lee, who happens to be the core of Seoul's military strength, gets injured in the war, then New Seoul would be finished right there. Looking at the barbarian standing before him, he wonders if the boy manages to take out the mountain bandits' leader. The huge kid in question looks around for a bit while standing and surprisingly wobbles on his feet, nearly collapsing. Immediately, Jin-T rushes to his side, yelling his friend's name out of concern. Even then behind him, asks if he's okay. Four Eyes then asks him if he isn't pushing himself too hard, noting that the giant's body is burning red. The shirtless warrior then confesses to feeling dizzy ever since he activated the stat stone. The brute holds his head in pain as he brings out several stat stones. In front of him, a red screen pops up, warning him that his abilities aren't increasing and it's due to the stat stone absorption being overloaded, hence causing system overload. The warrior notes that there's no effect of the stat stone on him but just dizziness. Guessing out of the blue, the captain hopes the brute didn't absorb a large amount of the stones at once, so he asks him how many. Embarrassed, the teenager suspects he took in over 30 of the stones, with more than half of them being power stat stones. Shocked, the sergeant says that the boy has taken beyond the limit a human can process at once. He continues like a nerd, starting using too much of the stats will make them not to apply and it can make one's body overload and die from it. He calls out to his captain and tells him that they quickly return Chialdu to the village for treatment. The senior ranked officer with a straight face tells the sergeant that it's already too late because they are in the bandit territory. Not too far ahead, the hooligans stand prepared as if they've been waiting for the party to arrive. A man in front of the men suddenly spots the shirtless warrior, who happens to be sweating profusely. He cannot believe his eyes as he sees him to be the same guy who fell into the puddle. In less than a second, the boy leaps at the man speaking and slams him into the ground with one hand on top of his head. He yells at the man to get lost while calling him a small fry with a loud voice. Chialdu yells at the bandits' leader, Jang Ho-chial, to come out. He yells saying that he has come for revenge. The sergeant quickly yells at him, reminding him that his body is not in a condition fit to fight and they should go back to the village. The man, who has a golden tooth and also a scar across his lip, picks at his teeth after having a meal. He then shows himself in full glory, asking who dares to call his name, referring to himself as the Mountain King. The man steps forward as he sees the boy who shouted his name earlier. Chialdu, whose condition doesn't look like it's improving, speaks harshly at his opponent for regarding himself as the king of the mountain. The man looks at the boy and smiles at him, saying that he is an interesting one for coming back alive. The bandit leader then vows to end him properly this time around. Standing behind his men, he yells at his men, beckoning them to attack. Immediately, the bloodthirsty crew lunge themselves at their foes, but their blades are parried by Jinti and the soldiers. The leader looks at the adamant shirtless warrior and says he'll deal with him personally. The man wearing wolf fur then dashes at the unstable warrior with his weapon. He swings it at the brute, but it is parried by his huge axe. The bandit leader then commends the boy for being able to block his strike with his meager weapon. He says he wants to know how long the boy can keep blocking. Excited, Chialdu tells him to stop talking and bring it on. Within moments, the two go at it, swinging their weapons in every which way. At least that's what it looks like. What's actually happening is that the bandit leader is sending multiple attacks with his spiked club toward the barbarian, and the dude who is unwell tries to offset everything. The round lasts for a few minutes before Chialdu is sent flying several meters away and crashing into the hill. Despite the crazy impact, Chialdu remains conscious and still grips his axe. The dude who sits on the floor commends his opponent's power. He says the man's attack range is so wide that he can't find any opening to get in with his axe. The dude then changes tactics, being a simple man who can't come up with mind-blowing strategies. The barbarian gets on his feet and uses his axe to get a hold of the wolf dudes. He then tosses the weapons into the air and yells as he dashes at the bandit that they fight barehanded. Immediately, they start trading blows, and it has the scarred lip leader asking what difference it will make. The bandit leader sees an exposed area in the boy's body and throws a fist there, yelling that the boy can't defeat him with a mere human body. After the attack lands, Chialdu makes it known that he is using the ogre skin ability, meaning that he isn't human. Upon seeing that his attack had no effect, Jang Ho Chial grins after confirming that the boy used ogre skin. As he continues talking, Chial hits him squarely on the face, knocking the man to the ground. He yells at his opponent that his chatter is too long. The bandit leader touches his face as he notes that the current kids never listen to their elders till the end. He too reveals that he uses the ogre skin skill. For the first time, the shirtless hunter came across someone having the same defense skills as him. As he exasperates, putting his arms to continue combat, Jang Ho Chial tells him it's too early to be surprised. The man lands a heavy uppercut, causing Chial to spew blood and sending him several meters into the air before crashing with a huge thud. The result of the battle surprises Team Barbarian as they pause from what they are doing and look at their fallen leader. Jinti, who is barely holding a sword with his knife, is surprised that his friend is being overpowered. The trio have their backs against each other as they are surrounded by the bandits, just like it happened the night before. The captain says that they might have to grab the warrior and run if things go south, but the sergeant notes that the bandits are too many. He quickly calls his captain's attention to the barbarian, who is locked in the arms of the bandit leader. He screams loudly as his body is crushed by the grip of the Mountain King. Shocked, the soldiers wonder what is going on. As a result, Jinti loses sight of an opponent leaping toward him to clobber his face. Thankfully, the captain steps in and sends the enemy away. The fallen foe then laughs at them, saying it's useless to struggle. He notes that Jang Ho Chial is using his ultimate technique, the human juicer. The fodder laughs at them, saying they're all finished, and watches as his boss squeezes the life out of the barbarian. The leader then asks the kid where all his confidence from before went. The man with the golden tooth then confesses that he has hunted ogres twice. As a result, he gained another skill from them, which is ogre power. The technique grants one the strength of a giant that can easily crush stones. He yells, calling himself Jang Ho Chial, the embodiment of power. And with that, we've once again covered up to the latest chapter of this manhwa. I know many of you didn't take much interest in this series the last time I uploaded it, but I plan on continuing it for a while. I genuinely think it's an interesting title, and I always somehow enjoy stories with big beefy characters. At least their powers feel more realistic than some skinny protagonists without an ounce of muscle on their body, but somehow having the strength to lift entire mountains and fight evenly against otherworldly horrors. Anyway, I just hope you guys enjoyed the story so far, and genuinely look forward to more. Until next time.